Another fort. I have never been here before. This is Amherstburg, and this is Fort Malden. Recognizing Major John Richardson, born in 1796 to 1852, and he was a volunteer at Fort Malden during the War of 1812, taken prisoner by the Americans at Moravian Town, released at the war's end, and retired on half pay in 1818, and spent the next 20 years in Europe. And he wrote books such as, poems such as the Tecumseh and the Custa, and a historical novel. So he returned to Canada as a journalist and founded the New Era in Brockville. And in 1842, he published his history, The War of 1812. That's pretty cool. The first military post at this location was named Fort Amherstburg, and it was constructed in 1796. This is the location of the longest American occupation on Canadian soil. And it was the first time where British Army soldiers were allowed a third meal. And then that became standard across the British Empire. The Detroit River. Imagine all the boats that have sailed along here. Native canoes, sailing vessels loaded with furs, warships, and steamers bringing holidayers to Boblo Island. Oh, plus giant freighters. After the military abandoned the fort in 1859, it became a home for an asylum for the mentally ill. This cottage was built in the 1850s for a retired soldier and his family. Around 86 of these homes were constructed just east of the port and leased at a moderate rate to veteran soldiers in return for light military duties. This belonged to Charles O'Connor, and it was moved here from its original location about 500 meters away. So we'll go in and have a look. It would be quite cramped for a family, as it only contained 2 rooms. There would probably be a bed for children underneath if there were children still living. Trundle bed. But looks like there's 2 beds in this room. And here's the toys. I love toys. Oh, that's a little spinning wheel. I love the stove. But I've always been fascinated with all kinds of wood stoves. And of course an awesome garden. Oh wow, look at the food. This is a museum, which was originally built as a laundry and a baking facility for the insane asylum. Oh, there goes the shooting. Well, as I was saying before I was interrupted, it was established in 1859 as a laundry and baking facility for the insane asylum. Later became a planing mill and eventually a private family residence in 1918. And it was acquired for the park and for the museum in 1946. Oh, that's a nice place. Oh, there'd be more verandas. Maybe on the other side. Of course, today the site looks very different than it would have been 170 years ago. Almost all the buildings from that period have been lost, and most of the ditch and the wall that encircled the fort is gone. There are wampum strings made of small shells. Here we have a powder horn, a Gertie powder horn, and an awesome cane. I like that cane. This would be the raised hilltop defensive area. All that remains of the brick cookhouse is an outline here. So the brick cookhouse was around 1820. Here you can see the old well. I was totally wrong. This is not a well. It is the cesspit, part of the fort's draining system from the privies. Right here are the foundations of a communal privy toilet for enlisted men and their families that stood here in 1840. Women and children had a small room, and the soldiers made do with an open structure, no privacy. Certainly different than the officers' facility. This addition was the hospital kitchen. It was added on to part of the old building. And these were the brick barracks. You see here the cards had no numbers because they were illiterate. That's pretty neat. Up there were buckets for sand because they locked them in at night for fires.
Okay, she has 2 teeth in that there. She said 15 seconds, but it still seems like using it up in that time. She's taking it out, and locking it in, right? Unless somebody's on the ground. Okay, here we go. Ready? Go. Is that right, Korea? Or is it just dummy shots? Nothing's happening. I don't know. I think the first one. Oh, yeah, maybe.
course, this is more like the officers' quarters. Single room. Wow, printing. That is cool. I talked about them locking those doors on the main barrack room for the men to prevent deserters. But what was funny is there were like 13 men out on watch and they all deserted. That's pretty cool. Because the Americans paid 4 times as much. They wanted to go over there, and some of them would go right over the river to the island over there. And a lot of places was only chest high, so. And in the winter, it'd be covered in ice. So yes, they did escape and rebel from the British Army.
Yeah. We do everything here as they would have back then, so it's very tedious, but it does pay off.
Oh, you have a reflector too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of neat that they cook their lunches in there. They make the bread, everything else, and soup. And they make this kind of cracker stuff on the griddle. I not just had a piece of that. Oh, I sometimes think I was born way too late. This is all that's left of the ordnance shed. First it was just to hold guns and ammunition, then it became like a storeroom that held all kinds of supplies. But it was demolished in the early 20th century. All that's left here is further foundations of officer barracks and soldiers' barracks. Be the officers' barracks at one end and the soldiers' barracks usually at the other. This was the site of the brick guardhouse from around 1821. There's just a foundation line. It's kind of under the part of the asylum where they built the kitchen. It was a frame brick building, contained 2 cells, a room for on-duty soldiers, and a cellar used for solitary confinement. It was demolished in the 1850s, and the outline is mostly obscured by the asylum-era cookhouse and laundry. Big boat. It was Matthew Pollard's pensioner's cottage in 1851. There's a sign there that says Park House Tinsmith. A Navy Yard was built here in 1796 to replace Detroit as the base and supply depot for the Provincial Marine on Lake Erie and Huron. In 1812, the General Hunter and Queen Charlotte, which were built here, took part in the capture of Detroit. The next year, his supply lines cut Robert Barclay's purely equipped fleet, including the Detroit, was defeated by Oliver Percy of the U.S. Navy in the Battle of Lake Erie. This reverse led the British to burn the Navy Yard on 27th of September 1813 before withdrawing from Amherstburg. So this is a memorial park in that, for that. This monument is to honor those who fought in the War of 1812. seems weird. It's so hot that the beach is closed. Nobody is on it. Not sure why.